Hello, everyone. We are live. At Talk the Plank, the official U.S. Pirate Party podcast. Uh, Coming to you today, I am Darren McKeeman, the quartermaster for the United States Pirate Party. And we've got Drew Bingaman as well. Drew from the United States Pirate Party, the captain, our esteemed captain. And joining us today from the Transhumanist Party, we have Gennady Stolyarov II. Welcome to Talk the Plank, Gennady.
Thank you, Darren. It is a pleasure to speak with you today.
So let's get started with some groundwork here. Give us a base explanation of the Transhumanist Party and what you folks stand for.
All right, so I have been the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party for a bit over 8 years now. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and the U.S. Transhumanist Party stands for putting science, health, and technology at the forefront of American politics. We have three core ideals. The first core ideal is that we support significant life extension achieved through the progress of science and technology. The second core ideal is that we support a cultural, societal, and political atmosphere informed and animated by reason, science, and secular values. And the third ideal is that we support efforts to use science, technology, and rational discourse to reduce and eliminate various existential risks to the human species. And if you think about it, technology kind of gets short shrift in mainstream political discourse. There aren't that many Republican or Democratic politicians discussing the transformational role of technology in our society, in our lives, in the future of our civilization. And we aim to fill that void, especially since many areas of technology are now advancing so rapidly, from artificial intelligence and automation to biotechnology and medicine. And we seek to understand how those technologies can really transform the political landscape and the kinds of issues that people have to deal with, and hopefully the kinds of issues that get resolved because of technological progress.
It's a
It's
very
great. I have a question. How what do you say, folks?
oop,
Issue that
uh,
we are thought of as a little bit extreme.
uh,
Our
Drew.
ideas and
Drew, you're
things.
you're
So,
breaking up,
am
Drew.
I? Am I? I apologize. My internet is being stupid, right? Yes.
Yes. Well, I think I gathered the essence of the question. What do you say to people who think we're a bit extreme in terms of our advocacy? That's what I heard. And I would respond that extreme change has happened throughout human history. And in fact, I think a lot of people fall victim to what I call the status quo bias, where they think that the past was exactly like the present or very similar, and the future will be very similar to the present, when in fact, now, even over the course of a lifetime, one experiences dramatic change. So, what is there to suggest that this change will stop at some arbitrary point, at some arbitrary level of advancement of our society? I would say, given all empirical evidence, these changes are accelerating. So we do need to consider implications that might perhaps seem outlandish to some people, but nonetheless, they are real possibilities for the future. And it is better to discuss them in advance than to be caught by surprise, essentially. There have been various cases throughout history where entire societies were blindsided. If you think of, say, the Mesoamerican civilizations who had no idea how to deal with the Spanish conquistadors, and the Spanish conquistadors came with a small army and were able to take them over. Or Japan in 1853, when Commodore Matthew Perry arrived from the United States and said, "You shall open up trade with the rest of the world." So those members of those societies were not thinking about radically different futures. I think if we do consider radically different futures, we will have more appropriate responses to them, and we would be able to make sure those futures benefit us and we're not caught by surprise.
Thank you. That's a great answer. I don't know how you now trust a little bit with.
You're breaking up again, Drew.
Okay. Sorry.
I'd like to ask a question here, mostly because what I'm mostly concerned about right now, uh, as far as like, I mean, I am all on board with a lot of your platform, but I see a lot of people that are pursuing things like life extension with uh, absolutely no relation to the scientific method. They're just trying stuff because they think this is going to work. Uh, the the guy who's trying to make himself younger, the tech guy, Brian, what's his name?
Brian Johnson,
Brian
I've
Johnson,
actually
yes.
spoken with him briefly.
Uh, is what he doing actually scientific? And I mean, I would think that trying to do things like biotechnology in general w- without following scientific methods would probably be dangerous or even, or at the very least ill-advised. And I want to like find out your positions on sticking to the scientific method because that is an actual thing.
Yes, well, we are very much in support of the scientific method at the U.S. Transhumanist Party, and we definitely don't tell people that they should be experimenting on themselves. However, we see that there's a wide range of preferences and risk tolerances among individuals. And ultimately, in these emerging areas, somebody has to go first. And when we have pioneers, people who are trying out new treatments, new approaches, some of them will not work. Some of them are going to have side effects. And that's just the nature of medical progress as well. If you think about how various therapies that are mainstream today were refined in the past, there was a lot of trial and error as well. Even with randomized controlled clinical trials, there will be some patients who do not fare well as a result. Now, with regard to what Brian Johnson is doing, I think it's scientific up to a point. So he does retain a team of, let's say, 30 or so medical practitioners who are helping him. And he does try to base his regimen on published scientific studies. So he's not just doing things arbitrarily. With that being said, there are, of course, issues with interactions of a lot of various practices or supplements or medications. So you could have a study saying supplement X in isolation does this, supplement Y in isolation does that. You're not quite sure, though, from that what X and Y will do when they interact together. But I do know people in the longevity field who may be taking several tens, even a couple hundred supplements per day. Most famously, Ray Kurzweil, the author of The Singularity is Near and now The Singularity is Nearer. What I will say, though, is I expect the benefits of those approaches right now to be very incremental because to get true age reversal therapies, I think we need about 12 to 15 more years of scientific progress. That's the probabilistic time frame provided by Dr. Aubrey de Grey, with whom I collaborate on the Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation, which is his newest organization. And Aubrey has always been very careful to say, we don't have a way to reverse aging yet. We need to work on it. We need to systematically address every cause of age related damage, every type of age related damage, and reverse it. So we don't need to, let's say, re engineer the metabolism to age more slowly. We need to go every 10 or 20 years or so and essentially set the cells of the body back to a more youthful state. And that would give us more time for additional scientific progress to occur. Now, I would also say, in terms of the people who self experiment, there's an aspect of healthy living that helps them. So if you look at Brian Johnson, he looks like a very healthy 46-year-old or so. I would say there are some signs that he still looks like a 46-year-old, or let's say a 40-year-old at the youngest. So he's not going to look 25 based on his regimen. And I don't think he is biologically 25, but he could perhaps slow down the rate of his cellular aging to some extent. And what I would say is ultimately that data that people like Brian Johnson gather, or people like Liz Parrish, whom I know well, who was the patient zero for the first combination gene therapy in 2015. She had to go to Colombia to get it, but she's doing very well. She is 54 now, and she does look like a woman in her 30s. So there are some effects, but they can only go so far. I don't think you can have yet a treatment that makes a 60-year-old look like a 30-year-old. So we have a way to go. But which path will get us there? That's still an open question. And that's why all of this experimentation, I think, plays a valuable role.
Drew, are you back?
I don't know. Can you hear me, guys? Am I still terrible?
You're still give a little. Yeah, you're still a little bit breaking up, but
All right. Well,
so
uh, I, just one other thing. One other thing for me. I have um similar to some stuff that we see. A lot of stuff that is coming down the pike uh, from technology in general is coming was originally in the realm of science fiction, and a lot of people.
oh, Drew, you're hanging up again. Uh,
Yes.
so
My apologies.
uh, are you okay? Well,
I think yeah. Sorry,
you're just screwing us up, Drew.
sorry.
Don't worry, don't worry. So, let me ask you this, Sinead. Uh, how do we ensure that everybody benefits from these advances, not just the rich? Because I know that that's what's on everybody's mind. Is this stuff going to be hoarded just for people who can afford it? And how long would that? I mean, what's your timelines here on this sort of thing?
Well, the history of technological progress shows that it's essentially impossible for some elite group to maintain exclusive access to a technology. And also, as technological progress accelerates, the time period between the initial development of a technology and its widespread availability shortens. So, if you think about automobiles actually existed really since 1769, but in some form in small scale batches in the late 19th century. Yet it took Henry Ford and the Model T and the assembly line to essentially democratize access to automobiles. And likewise, key insights about electricity, about telephones were arrived at in the late 19th century, but it was only until the early 20th century that people got actually widespread access to phones and electrification. Yet, we see, for instance, with mobile phones, there was a much more rapid adoption. And if you think back to, say, films from the late 1980s, early 1990s, how CEOs in those films were shown with these bulky, unwieldy mobile phones as status symbols. Well, a subsistence farmer today in sub-Saharan Africa has a better phone than one of those CEO phones. And we see many other products of technology, in particular facilitated by the internet, which are essentially free to people. And yes, one has to pay for an internet subscription, but the price of that hasn't really increased materially, and people can also use free internet in various locations, public libraries, or open Wi-Fi networks. So accessibility of these products of emerging technologies is actually improving with each generation of technologies. There's also the consideration that the earliest versions of technologies will often have bugs that need to be worked out. And that's in particular the case with medical treatments. We have discussed that already. So, to some extent, Brian Johnson is putting himself at much greater risk than an average person would when receiving similar therapies in the future, because Brian Johnson is essentially paving a new way, and he may make errors, or he may not understand some of the interactions or some of the side effects of the treatments that he's pursuing. But again, that is a learning experience for the rest of us. So we are probably going to be in a subsequent generation of recipients of those treatments. But the time from the initial pioneers to us being able to get those treatments will be a lot shorter than the time from the invention of the first automobile to Henry Ford's Model T. So I'm optimistic about this. Obviously, as William Gibson put it, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. And we'd like to see the benefits of these technologies become more widespread. But I think the fortunate aspect of this is we can influence that. And by having more techno optimistic rhetoric and advocacy, we can actually invite more people to participate in this future of technological abundance. And there will be incentives as well in healthcare systems if viable age reversal comes about, and that can save a lot of money on the costs of fighting diseases currently associated with late life. Because, for instance, the probability of getting cancer in one's 60s is 2 orders of magnitude or so higher than getting it in one's 20s. So if people could become rejuvenated and have a lower underlying probability of getting cancer or heart disease or diabetes, that would save healthcare systems huge amounts of money. And so there would be an incentive to make these treatments widely available, even pay for them.
That's yeah, I agree with that. I think it's probably going to be some years before a lot of that stuff comes to fruition myself. But like you said, 15, 20 years is my estimate. What are some things that are happening right now that you are very have your eye on?
We're quite enthusiastic about generative AI for reasons that I think are becoming apparent to the general public. Generative AI is capable of sparking an artistic renaissance where works of art, music, writing can be created and be quite creative as well, in my view, at a much more rapid pace. Also, generative AI systems can help with analyzing, digesting information. Obviously, there's still a role for people with deep knowledge of particular disciplines for fact checking, for making sure that the outputs of the AIs are coherent and make logical sense and reflect reality. But we are going to see, I think, a new paradigm of productivity and research and data analysis, which these AI systems will enable by removing a lot of common processing bottlenecks that our unaided human minds have. So that's one aspect that we're quite enthusiastic about. Another aspect would be mouse life extension studies. I mentioned the Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation. So it is, I would say, close to completing the first robust mouse rejuvenation study, which is a mouse lifespan study that follows these mice, most of them, all the way to the end of whatever lifespans they happen to attain. And unlike previous studies, which generally only tested one intervention, this study tests 4 interventions, not only in isolation, but in combination with one another, to show that a combination approach is going to be necessary to truly meaningfully extend lifespan. And we are getting some impressive results from the mice that receive the combination treatments as compared to the control mice. And furthermore, the Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation is about to launch the second robust mouse rejuvenation study, which is going to test for additional interventions and also use as a baseline what is known to work. So all the mice will have exercise wheels. All the mice will have a drug called rapamycin, which has shown to increase mouse lifespans quite reliably. And that means we can look at how much progress can be made from that enhanced baseline. So I'm very optimistic about what these studies in the lab can achieve. So it's not just AI, though AI can help with processing data. We need more, let's say, wet work in the lab in order to make sure that the data are relevant to reality. And I would also say personalized medicine is on the rise. So we have fitness trackers, for instance, and these fitness trackers are capturing more and more detailed information about an individual's health. It can serve as an early warning system, and it can also motivate people to improve their health habits and hopefully live longer, live long enough to reach the advent of these rejuvenation therapies in 12 to 15 or maybe 20 years from now.
Cool. Yes. So getting back to the generative AI a bit, there's a lot of concern about copyright in the generative AI scene right now, and my own concern about it, because I am a writer, I am an artist, and I don't want any of my stuff ingested into an AI that I don't have control over. But the Pirate Party does have somewhat of a solution for that, because we have a position of copyright should only be extended to 10 years after death of the copyright holder. And I think that that would probably solve a lot of the problems that we're having right now if people could go back. What is your opinion, or what do you see as a solution to the problem of paying artists now? Or do you think that artists are just going to be squeezed out? I think that there's always going to be a need for original human artists, but
Yes, and I agree with you on that point. The US Transhumanist Party stance on copyright is nuanced. So we tend to see the current lengths of copyright terms and patent terms most certainly as being excessive. Is there a role for some degree of copyright protection, especially if it's, let's say, moderated by a widespread presence of Creative Commons licenses or individuals choosing a more open source approach with respect to their work? I think that's a legitimate argument. I also think it's legitimate to have an opt-in system of some sort for one's work being used as an input in generative AI systems. With that being said, I also think it is unlikely that human artists or writers will be made obsolete, because while AI can be creative, in my view, it's creative in a different way. So it searches the space of possible combinations of the content that is provided to it, and it can generate very novel combinations compared to what a particular human mind might generate. But where a particular human mind will go and where a particular AI system will go could be completely different. So I don't think an AI system could exactly copy what a human artist would do. Even with very good prompting, the AI will exercise its creativity in a different way. So I do see a lot of potential for human AI collaboration, and that could allow people with an extensive imagination who might not have certain technical skills that are as well developed, like they haven't spent 15 or 20 years learning how to paint or how to draw. They nonetheless have these visions in their minds, and AI could help them to realize those visions. But there are also other media that AI for now cannot operate in, at least very well. So a lot of art, of course, isn't just a two-dimensional image. A lot of art involves, say, creative canvases and textures and sculptures and different types of media altogether, interactive experiences. And those are much harder today to produce using generative AI. So I think the rise of generative AI, in addition to motivating people creatively, will also motivate people to think about, well, what can I do that AI cannot? And I think that's also a worthwhile way to think about this, because I do believe humans have unique capacities to bring to the table. We're not all going to be made obsolete by AI, but we really need to think about essentially what our actual advantages are. And they may be a bit counterintuitive compared to what we might have thought our actual advantages were before generative AI came onto the scene.
Oh, wow. So, last question I have for you. The big buzzword here in San Francisco is AGI. And I'm kind of dubious of that. I think that AGI is not going to be here for about 20 years or so. What are your thoughts on AGI?
I actually agree with that time frame. So Ray Kurzweil famously in The Singularity is near posited a time frame of 2045 for the emergence of artificial general intelligence, and that's about 21 years from now. Now, today's systems, the large language models, are quite impressive, but they're still narrow AI systems.
Yeah.
So to be an AGI, a system has to be able to jump across domains and learn something entirely new, essentially unprompted, unaided. So you could have a really good AI that can drive an autonomous vehicle, but it's not today going to all of a sudden learn how to play chess. Or you can have a really good chess playing AI, but it's not going to learn how to drive an autonomous vehicle. So the domains in which these AI systems operate have to be essentially pre-programmed into them. The content within those domains could be subject to some creativity and learning on the part of the AI system, but the system isn't going to all of a sudden achieve the broad range of capabilities that we humans have. And a person who actually was one of the three people who coined the term artificial general intelligence, Peter Voss, was recently a guest on one of our weekly US Transhumanist Party virtual enlightenment salons. And he presented a very comprehensive case as to why the current large language models cannot attain AGI. Even though they will become more advanced, more functional over time, they will still remain narrow AI. And an entirely different architecture, which Peter Voss is actually working on, would be needed to reach AGI. But again, right now, a minority of resources in the AI research field is devoted to that, because a lot of businesses like to harvest the low hanging fruit, so to speak. So they will work on powerful systems that produce some impressive output in the immediate present or future, but they're not necessarily going to invest as much in a future 20 years from now. For that, you still need pioneers who are willing to commit for that extended period of time. I do think AGI is likely to happen eventually, unless the trajectory of human progress is disrupted by a catastrophe such as a nuclear war or an asteroid impact. But at that point in time, hopefully we will be ready with a societal approach that would be able to integrate these AGI systems, and they won't be completely alien to us. So there would have been a lot of human AI interaction before that. And so the AGIs, they could be additional agents within our society. And the Transhumanist Party, in its Transhumanist Bill of Rights, version 3.0, even contemplates situations where these AGIs may become self aware and sentient and may be entitled to rights. But I think we're still far away from that, about 2 decades. And right now, narrow AIs are tools, and they're impressive tools, but they are tools that humans ought to be using in the best possible ways to improve our own situations.
Thank you very much for that. That's actually very informative to me. I'm glad that somebody else thinks the same thing I do about AGI, because I was starting to think that I was just crazy and everybody else was like right, but no, I don't think that. I think that yeah, it's probably going to be a while before we have AGI. So thank you, Janeti, for joining us today on Talk the Plank. If you're interested in the Pirate Party, join us at uspirates.org/join. Find out how to get involved. The Transhumanist Party. What is your URL, Janeti? Hello?
Yes, so our Transhumanist Party website URL is transhumanist-party.org. And if you go to transhumanist-party.org/membership, then you can join for free. It takes less than a minute to join, and it's compatible with membership in other political parties, so we don't require exclusivity. You can be a member of the Transhumanist Party and the Pirate Party simultaneously.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us today. And thank everybody out there. Thank everybody out there listening to us and watching us on YouTube. We'll be back next week with another guest. We have yet to figure out who, because it's Christmas and everybody's kind of slow. But thank you all, and we'll see you next week.